when we took our idea for the Back Home TV show to Scripps Interactive Channel 9 that we were working with here locally in Cincinnati, one of the guys that me and Jim Amatulli, the producer and director of the show, who's my partner, we were sitting around a meeting, and one of the guys said, "Hey, why don't you help veterans?" And me and Jim just kind of looked at each other and we're like, "That's a great idea."
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of American Snippets. I'm your co-host, Barb Allen. I have a great pleasure today of sitting down with a new friend of mine, Don Reilly. We got to meet him at an event run by Tim Clun, TK. You may remember him from a previous interview we did. We're going to link back to his story just for kicks. But Don is someone that he was representative of people we love to meet, because there's so much you can do in your life, in other people's lives. He thinks outside the box. He goes where his passion takes him, and he just makes it all fit. And now he and his partner, Jim, have just started, just brand new nonprofit is official, Back Home Patriots, to support veterans and help them with home renovations and repairs when they cannot otherwise afford it. It is a much needed and huge void in the world of veterans. And I feel like it is certainly the least we can do to help people who have given so much for our country. To see other people stepping in to fill that void is super empowering to me, and positive and hopeful. We love seeing it. We're excited to share the story, offer them support, and see what we can do to help spread the word of Back Home Patriots. In between there, he's got a very heartwarming personal story I am excited and honored to share with you. I know you're going to love it. It's got a little bit of something for everyone. Sit back, tuck in, and get ready as Don Reilly takes over on American Snippets and shares the story. Good morning, Don. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It is I feel like I'm saying this all the time because it is. I'm like, it's another gloomy day in New York. I don't know. We're having like some ridiculous version of summer this year, but I don't know how it is out there. You're in Ohio, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually in the border, Kentucky and Ohio. I live in Union, Kentucky, but I'm actually in Florence, Kentucky right now. And we got a lot of rain. So people are actually have swimming pools in their backyard right now. So
yeah, I know. It is ridiculous. How is that? And that actually brings us in. We're going to talk about you have so many different businesses going on. You want to talk about entrepreneurs. This guy here, he is an entrepreneur. He just digs in, but he doesn't do it halfway. He just goes, right? One of your entrepreneurial businesses is Elegant Home Exteriors, and you've morphed that into this nonprofit that you're doing. So tell us first about what came, obviously your professional business, Elegant Home Exteriors, came first.
Yeah. Barb, I started out my career as a carpenter. So, back in the early 90s, I worked for a local company here in Cincinnati called Southern Ohio Builders. And so I had a very long career with those guys. And then eventually I created Elegant Home Exteriors. So I wanted to create my own model to where I could take people's home and kind of make them elegant. And I always use the word elegant because I tell even the team, I call them the Elegant Home Exterior team, because when we go in, we take so much pride when we leave the house. We want the customer to say, "Man, you just made my home really nice and elegant." So that's kind of how I got in the home improvement business. The Back Home thing, me and Jim Amatulli created this Back Home TV show with Scripps Interactive and Channel 9, which is here locally in Cincinnati. And we decided that we wanted to help veterans in a way that people are having helped them. And that's physical, mental, psychological, PTSD. If they have any of those situations, that we could step in and kind of give them a hand up. So that's kind of how Back Home, the TV show, was created. So
that's great. I love it when people say, "Oh, that's how I started this. That's how I started that." I feel like those two words cover so much, right? That's how, right? But in between that's how, in between the two words, there is grit and sweat and startup funds and meeting people and getting the paperwork filed and that first day and payroll and all that. So, I mean, how is it let's talk about first anybody who's looking to launch a business, like you said, that's how I got into that's how we started Elegant Home Exteriors. It's one thing to have the idea to do something, right? And then it's another thing to turn that idea into a business. So what is the step that you took to go from that idea to creating a business? What's like one step in between the words, that's how?
Well, I tell people all the time, it's kind of funny you ask that question because sometimes good salespeople aren't good business owners. And I was fortunate enough that I was a great salesperson and a good carpenter, but I was also a good business owner. And it's always challenging on a day-to-day basis because you're dealing with people. People have busy lives, as you know, and you're dealing with payroll and employees. So it's a very hard process. And I tell people, I have guys come to me all the time and say, hey, I want to start my own business. And I say, well, sometimes being a salesperson or a carpenter, it's kind of hard to be a business owner because there's so many more elements to it. It's not just driving around in the truck all day and talking to people.
Yeah.
You got people calling you all day. You're taking phone calls. You're meeting people on job sites. You're bidding jobs, and then also you're doing the payroll. You make sure everybody's paid on Friday. So I've been doing this for almost 11 and a half years now with Elegant Home Exterior, and that's a long time in the home improvement business. Most home improvement guys don't last 5 years. It's kind of proven in our industry because of the money, the financial situation where they get behind, they don't pay the bills. So management, not only with our suppliers and manufacturers, but also in the building side, making people's homes, taking it to that next step and that next level. So, and I'm very proud of that. It's something I take a lot of pride in because in our industry, you hear it all the time, fly by night guys out there.
Yes, I've had several of them.
You never see it.
Damage my home. Yes. Take my money.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so we try to separate ourselves from those guys, and we've been very successful at doing it. And I take a lot of pride in that. And people say, what's your key to success in the home improvement business? I always say good people. It always starts with good people. And I'm a very good judge of character. So when I meet a person, I can tell instantly if that's a person I want to have on my team. And I think that's one of the keys to our success here at Elegant Home Exterior. So that's
like a dog. Like dogs can sense people or not. Like I don't like people my dog doesn't like, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. I wasn't actually calling you a dog. I'm just to me that's a compliment.
Hey, I do like biscuits. So
There you go. Okay, so in between all that and starting the business, somewhere along the way, you identified a need for veteran. How did this happen? Because you're not a veteran, correct?
No, ma'am.
Right.
No, ma'am.
So how does that happen? We speak with a lot of people who are veterans who know firsthand the struggles and have that brotherhood and the camaraderie and come out and struggle with their transition back to civilian life. And through, one channel to another, they fight through it, push through it, and they start a nonprofit and they fill that void that they personally know and have experience with. But this is not something that you have personally experienced. So how did you decide to, what brought that to your attention first? How did you become aware of that need and connect and identify with it?
Well, let's start with my childhood.
Okay.
I was raised by a single mother. When I was 18 years old, I graduated from Ryle High School here in Northern Kentucky. And I was always fascinated by the military as a kid, watching war movies growing up. And I took the ASVAD when I was 18 and I passed it. And my mother scored very high on it. I got like a 55, which was pretty good back then. They say it's a lot harder today, but I did really well on it. And my mom wouldn't let me go. She said, I don't want to lose my son. And so we argued, and the recruiter kept coming to the house from the Army and saying, "No, we want Don to come." And she wouldn't.
What was her fear? She thought that you were going to get killed in the military, or just with deployments.
Well, I think it was the fact that she raised me and my sister, and I was kind of like protecting my sister. My mom worked all the time, so she was afraid if I was gone. I think the fear of that, like her and my sister just being there alone.
Yeah.
So I think that fear set in, and she just decided she wasn't going to let me go, and that caused a little rift in the house for a while. So,
okay.
But anyway, so I've always had this fascination with the military, and then I'd never, be honest with you, all these years later, I'm 45. I'd never thought about the military anymore. It just kind of was out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So when we took our idea for the Back Home TV show to Scripps Interactive Channel 9 that we were working with here locally in Cincinnati, one of the guys that me and Jim Amatulli, the producer and director of the show, who's my partner, we were sitting around a meeting, and one of the guys said, "Hey, why don't you help veterans?" And me and Jim just kind of looked at each other and we're like, "That's a great idea," you know? So Jim's like, "Let me get home. I got to start writing some stuff and putting some stuff on paper." That's the way Jim is. So he calls me the next day. He's like, "I think this is a great idea." He said, "We need to have another meeting with Channel 9 and see where this could take us, because we could do these home improvement projects for vets and really, take their life to another level and give them some joy and happiness that maybe they can't. Maybe the guy lost a leg or a limb, or he has PTSD. We could take these certain things in their home and make them nice for them and kind of give them a hand up." And that's kind of how Back Home was created, the TV show. So, and if I'm being long-winded, just let me know here. This is kind of a long story here. So me and Jim, we met with Channel 9. They loved the idea. They loved the concept. And the nice thing about it was Channel 9 said, "Hey, we're willing to go on this journey with you." So we filmed Back Home in about 4 to 5 days. We vetted a bunch of veterans. We became friends with a gentleman named Stephen Lee. Stephen was part of the USO. He was on the board of the USO. And Stephen really jumped in and helped us find some veterans that we could talk to, that we could kind of vet. And so we went, and me and Jim spent 2 or 3 days just driving around, meeting these veterans, going to their house, finding out their stories. And we was really, excited that, that we found 2 veterans that really fit the mold for what we were looking to do. And
so did you have to then tell the other veterans, like, "Hey, I'm sorry, we didn't pick you"? Was that? I always see like the other side of it, the struggle. So it's super easy to go tell 2 veterans, "Your story fits. You're amazing. Here's all these reasons that you fit." How do you then tell the other ones?
Well, I let Jim do that. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. We actually sent them a real nice email, and we told them that our plan was to do 22 episodes.
Okay.
These were the first 2 episodes. So we said that we would basically come back. We would circle back around, if we end up shooting 22 episodes, because at that point we knew we were just going to do the 1 episode, right. 1 to 2 episodes. And so we didn't know where it was really going to take us. So to make that kind of that commitment, and we didn't want to kind of dangle a carrot with nobody. We just said, "Hey, these are the 2 we're picking. We appreciate your time, your effort. If we do a bigger series, we will come back to you at that point, and maybe we could use you in that bigger series, and maybe we won't." So, and that's kind of where we left it. So,
okay. So the 2 veterans, were they from these recent conflicts? What is your criteria for that? Is it like, do you go back to World War II veterans, or is it strictly post 9/11?
No, it was basically due to their needs, their struggles here in civilian life, and what they needed for their homes at that time. So our first veteran was Stephanie Kemplin. Stephanie lived here locally in Cincinnati. Stephanie was one of the first female gunners in Afghanistan. So she's single mom, lives in up in Ohio. So she was the first one. And then our other one was Bob Snow. And you're more welcome to go to backhomeent.com. You can watch our Vimeo links on there and watch some of the episodes that we did with those 2 folks. But Stephanie, her house, she had PTSD, and she couldn't really do a lot of things around the house, as a single mom and a full-time job. So we came in, we put new windows, patio door in her house, on the back of her house. We redid her kitchen for her. So we did a lot of those things that she couldn't do, and she just didn't have the time to do, or couldn't get a contractor to do. So we also we put a brand new AC system in for her. I went to Dave Roberts, Dave was part of our show. We call him Cowboy Dave. He's a character within himself. So Dave's got the big old mustache and the beard, and Dave's just a great guy, and you can see him in our series. But him and Brad, his partner, Cowboy Heating and Air, they stepped in and said, "Hey, Don, we really want to help this deserving veteran." They said, "How can we help?" So we went to Cork and Steel. Cork and Steel stepped up to the plate and gave us about a $12,000 to $13,000 HVAC system with a brand new.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. So we put that system in for her, put her windows and everything in. And then at the end of the show, we revealed she always wanted to have a shed for her nonprofit. Now she has a nonprofit that she helps women who sex trafficking, and she rescues animals. And Barb, the thing that's really cool about what I've learned through all these veterans in the 2 years that I've been through this process, and I've learned so much, and I've met so many cool people like yourself. But the thing I've learned is these veterans, they don't want to ask for help. They're prideful. They got unbelievable stories, and the funny thing is, most of them are helping other people, even though they're going through their own struggles. And that's what really stuck with my heart. Is as I met these veterans, it's like, hey, my world's falling apart, but I'm out there helping somebody else, and we did a Gold Star family, very cool family, the Zanawick family, live up in Dayton, Ohio. Paul, their son, was killed by a roadside bomb. And he was just an unbelievable young man, and they're a Gold Star family. They just were super, super great people. Here they have their world's falling apart. Their house is falling apart. They can't, they couldn't keep some of the rooms remodeled because they didn't have the money. So we stepped in and did a bunch of projects for them, and I learned so much about this family. While we were there working on their house, they're setting up a 5K run to raise money for veterans, and here their world's falling apart. That just blew me away that these veterans are helping other people, and I don't know, it makes you realize that, there's a bigger mission out there. And that's when it kind of set into my soul, and it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. I was like, this is my life mission. I want to help these people, and I want to change the way people look at military service forever. And we're definitely going to tell their stories. So that's kind of where, so that's where the Back Home just kind of took me to that place where I said, this is too big of a mission. I gotta go for this and to help these people out.
So from there, then you and Jim decided, you saw the bigger need and how there is. And then I will tell you, right? So I spent from my own connection to the military world. I know that the need you talk about is real, and it's more of a practical one, right? It's not like the spas and all that. And I know you mentioned the one veteran has struggles with PTSD. And to be clear, I like that you pointed out that it wasn't the PTSD that prevented her from getting her home done and all that. It was when you come back and you're a single parent and you're raising children, and time and money are very scarce, right? And so, because she gave so much to our country and in service of others, it was awesome that you went in and stepped in and gave back to somebody who gave so much. And I know from kind of being in her after service situation, right? I never served, but struggling to raise the 4 kids on my own and get this house and this property and the pets and the kids. I completely understand how unbelievably overwhelming it can be, and how things just start to literally just fall apart, like doors fall off. I'm like, I can't fix that. Like, I got 4 kids, and it just piles up, and you just get used to like, all right, well, this door has to shove this way. Don't go down those stairs. They're going to break, like that kind of thing. Right. And then you get rooked by all the contractors who come in. And I've had them come in. They've literally come back in my garage and stolen things from me. They have taken money. They've tried to get more money out of me, start a job, didn't finish it. I mean, I have had the gamut of people come in and just take complete advantage of me and stuff not being done because they see the single mom there and you're just so busy. You just take people at your word. Like, okay, look, I'm going to go take care of all these other things. Thank you for fixing this. And then you come back and all my tools are stolen and they're gone, that kind of stuff. So I love that you jump in and do that. And as working as a veteran service officer for a couple of years in my county, I would speak to these families and come in, and it would often be as an aside, now I need a wheelchair and I can't get up this hallway. I need a ramp to my house. So many times we would hear people need a ramp to their house and they can't get in, and insurance won't pay for it and all this. And what do you do? And so, just knowing that there's options out there for these people is huge. Yeah. And so I think that your problem is not going to be finding families and veterans that need that support. Your challenge is going to be finding funding and time to meet those needs. So are there ways that people can come forward right now locally in your community and help you with the funding and the time?
Yes,
to do that?
Yes, we have, Barb. We have people email us all the time that there's a gentleman here locally in Florence who just not even probably 4 weeks ago, we paid for his father's funeral because he was a veteran. He was an Army guy, and he's in a wheelchair. And his name's Howard. Good, and I see him at Kroger's all the time. And he's an unbelievable patriot, unbelievable soldier, and he kept saying, Don, could you do my roof on my house? And I said, you know what? We will definitely look at that and see if we can help you out there. Well, in the midst of us setting all that up, his father died. And so his father owned the house, so they were going to lose the house.
Oh, man.
So he called me and he was crying. He said, Don, he goes, I don't know what to do. He said, we're going to lose the house because it was in Dad's name and Dad's no longer with us. And Howard's in a wheelchair, so he can't get out of the chair and go fix the roof. So anyway, they end up losing the house and he moved into assisted living. And it just kind of shows you what some of these veterans go through. And I think he gets minimum amount of money a month from the military. So he said, I can't afford to bury my father. So he said, my father's been sitting in the morgue for about 2 weeks. And he said he's on ice. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but he goes, I can't. He goes, I can't afford to bury him. So I went down to the funeral home and I talked to Don Ketchum, who was the local funeral director. And I said, Don, what can I do to help this gentleman out? I said, Howard's just been a really big supporter of our Back Home TV show. And I said, I want to do something for Howard. I said, he doesn't own the house anymore, so I can't put a roof on it. But I said, what can I do? And believe it or not, he said, hey, I can't help you financially with the funeral. He said, the price is the price. He said, but if you want to pay for it, he said, of course we can allow you to do that. So
that was nice of him.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, I understand it's a business.
What can you do for me? Nothing.
Yeah. So I talked to Jim Amatulli and we talked about it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to help this veteran out. So we paid for his father's funeral. And I got some guys to help out. I went to some of the local business partners that I have here locally in our area. And, guy gave 500, guy gave 1,000.
That's
so
great.
So we put the money together and we buried his father and I paid it all to the funeral home and we wrote a check. And you know what? He went on Facebook and just said all these wonderful things. I told him, I said, Howard, you don't need to do that. So, but he still goes online. Every time I post something about Back, he'll say something Yeah. But you know what? To help him in that way, like I said, I get emotional about this stuff because if I could do more, I would. But it takes time, money. There's a lot of things that come into play to really taking it to the next level. And that's what Back Home Patriots is all about. And that's why we created Back Home Patriots, because we felt like we could do more for these soldiers who've given so much. And the Back Home TV show was just a platform to tell the story. Right. But now Back Home Patriots is going to be the vehicle that drives to help these veterans across the country that can't, build that ramp for that lady that can't get, who served, she can't get up into her house. I just had a guy call me, a good friend of mine, John Saliga. He owns Window World franchise here in Cincinnati. John called me 2 days ago and said, Don, he goes, I got a guy who we helped a couple years ago. We put windows in his house, but now he needs a door opened up because he's a double amputee.
Yeah.
He keeps rubbing his stub on the door as he goes out the door. It's only a 32-inch door. He said, I would like to see if you could come in and make it a 36-inch door to where he could get his wheelchair in and out. So I'm supposed to go next week to look at this project. So these are they're not big. Sometimes they're not big projects, but
they're big to the person. They matter, they make that difference. And when you can't get that in 4 inches, right? What is 4 inches in the world? But to somebody, 4 inches can be the difference between recurring pain and stress and trauma every time you slam that in, or not. And so probably every time he goes through the doors, I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice. And it's just going to stay with them. And that is, I like that you point that out. Sorry, that it doesn't have to be huge. The changes you can make and you do what you do, and not everybody, one person cannot be all things to all people, right? You, Don Reilly and Back Home Patriots are never going to be the one-stop fits-all solution to every veteran who needs every help. But if everybody jumps in and does their part, if there's 50 different versions of you in 50 different states, everybody doing what they can, then that's a greater thing. And so do you have plans, or is this maybe can you see down the road 5, 10, 15 years? Are you hoping that maybe other people pick up this work and maybe across the country this is happening?
Well, my goal is, and I told Jim this when we started this, is it would be nice to have partner relationships with contractors in all cities.
Yeah.
I see this as a bigger picture. Like you said, I'm kind of a visionary, and we always set 5 to 10-year goals on everything we do, even as a company.
Right.
And I see this where we could have contractors in different cities that we could partner with, and Back Home Patriots could work with those maybe they could have a nonprofit that's their carpenters or window guys or siding guys, and they could help in their local community, that we could work together and travel there and as teams go in and, rehab these homes for these veterans. I think it could be much bigger. So,
yeah, it can always be, I don't know what that was. It can always be bigger, right? It can always grow. It can always grow and go. Sorry, we're giggling because whenever something goes awry in the middle of a podcast or catches me off guard, I call it, right? I'm like, I will call it out. I'm like, oh, do I need to go now? Do you have a commercial? The dog's barking. I can't help it. I'm like, it's real. It's not freaking Fox News, right? Like, we get to be people. So I just call it like something. I don't know what that was. It just flashed, but call me off guard. Okay.
One thing I did want to say is, a lot of people ask me, they said, why did you start, Back Home, the TV show? And people thought, well, Don Reilly wants to be a star. Or so, you get, when you're doing something good, there's always that negative person that wants to bring you down. So, and I just want to set the record straight. It wasn't about me being a star. Now, do I like being a host of a show? Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. It was fun because I get to tell these veterans stories. I get more fun. That was the joy of it. But, the thing is, the platform for the TV show was just for a broader audience. And most people don't realize this, but we actually connected with Litton Entertainment out of LA due to Jim being a movie producer. Most people don't know this, but Jim produced 2 major motion pictures here in Cincinnati. He was the first guy to get the tax credit in Cincinnati.
Awesome.
So his platform and having the relationships he had out in LA brought us to UTA, which United Talent Agents out of LA, and we connected through them with Litton Entertainment. If you know anything about Litton, that's Hearst Productions. Hearst actually was the one that produced Extreme Home Makeover, and all that. So they're a very, very big outfit. And so we had a major sponsor on board. And just to tell you our struggles, we've been down this road for about 2 years now trying to produce this show. And we were at the dance floor ready to produce this thing, and the gentleman from one of our sponsors resigns right in the middle of our transaction with this major company who was going to back us for this TV show.
Oh man!
So he resigns, and I guess I can tell you it's U.S. Bank was the sponsor, and so the gentleman, there's a program through U.S. Bank called Proud to Serve. If you don't know about it, you probably go on their website. Okay. They're a big organization. And the gentleman who ran that was basically driving the bus for us. And corporate America, when you got an inside guy, that's always a good thing. And he was really helping us because he cared about veterans, and he wanted to help us to make that platform bigger, so we could tell these stories of these soldiers. Because a lot of everyday people, we live our lives, and I can always relate because I lived my life and didn't think about veterans for years, and we just go about our daily, taking the kids to school and doing all these things and buying groceries and paying mortgages. And when you really sit down and you think about the freedoms we have, and I get so aggravated when people say that freedom's not, that it's not free, what I'm saying? And I look at people and I go, freedom's not free. There's somebody who sacrificed their life so you could get in your car and turn the key every morning and go to work. So, and I don't think the average person thinks about that. And how do you feel about that? I just, I look at that and I think, how can I make a difference? But also, how can I change someone's thinking on that process? So,
yeah, it is a tough one, right? Like, I plead guilty to that before I had a husband who was in the military. I didn't really think much about it too, but it was also a difference in pre 9/11 and post 9/11, right? Like, yes. I was raised not in a time of official war, right? Or conflict or known
Sure.
war, whatever you want to call it. So post 9/11, it is a little more frustrating to see when people like just dismiss it. And for me, like on Memorial Day, somebody's like, just celebrating and not really taking time to reflect. I mean, Memorial Day is the last day I saw my husband. He deployed that day. He died 10 days later. And so it's like powerful for me too. And for years, it could make me angry. And I would be like a little self-righteous about it, indignant, but what does that do? Right. And so I think you just have to understand that for me anyway, when I see people just going about their business and enjoying their life and getting their hustle bustle, I mean, that is exactly what people serve for, so that the average person doesn't have to think about that. Right. Like
Yes.
we're here, we're serving, we're defending, we're doing this so that you don't have to think about it. You go.
Sure.
So I think that's something they take upon themselves. And most people, they don't need it's nice. It's nice. And you don't want to see that abuse. So there's a difference between people going out about like with happiness and gratefulness in their hearts and going about their lives and their business, and people who just abuse it or don't take advantage of it and complain and do all that. So I think there's the two sides. When you see people going about their lives and doing well and prosperous and being kind to their neighbors and their community, giving back, but not necessarily thinking about the veterans, that's one thing. When you see people who are abusing the system, complaining about it, not adding value to it, and like miserable about it, and then even further like demeaning the military and their efforts, that's the other side. So it's a fine line to walk. It's a fine line, but it's just the way it is. It's some people you're going to be able to open up and educate and they want to get involved. And some people are just never going to care. And I think you got to do what you can and focus on what you can and the people you can reach and touch, and understand that you're not going to reach and touch everyone. And maybe that's just the way it's meant to be. We need the blend to keep it interesting.
It's like my mom used to say, what makes me smart to know when I'm dumb. So
yeah, exactly.
So
how did you do all this? You have a big family. I have 4 boys. You have 4 children of your own, but they're not boys.
No, 4 girls. And
so talk about family. You have I mentioned in the top of the show, you have this heartwarming story. I love it. It's very moving. So I'm not even going to lead you with questions. I'm just going to ask you to do what you do best and jump right in and tell the whole thing, Don. Take it.
All right. Yeah. Well, me and my wife, Cindy, we got married about 14 years ago. And my wife, she's a nutritionist. And so she graduated college. I was running a business, and she come home one day and said, I rented a movie for us. And I said, okay, what'd you get? She goes, I got The Blind Side. And I said, oh, okay, we'll watch it tonight. So we're sitting there watching this movie, and it's pulling on my heartstrings the whole time. I'm watching Sandra Bullock with this football player. He's 6'6" and he's African American, and I'm like, how? And I mean, it still gives me goosebumps. I'm thinking, how cool is this? This lady took this boy in her house, and so we just get to talking. She goes, I think because we've been trying to have children, we couldn't have children, and so she said maybe we can foster. And I said, well, check into it. And so she checked into it, and she comes home. She goes, well, next week we got a meeting. We're going to do CPR classes. We're going to Holly Hill, which is the agency we went through here locally in Northern Kentucky. And so, long story short, if you know anything about the adoption agencies out there today it's a lot harder than it was when me and Cindy did it. Like you would go and you would take CPR classes, you go through the classes. They teach you CPR on small children. I learned how to use 2 fingers, so, I mean, all these things that you don't know because you don't have children,
right.
And they educate you. Well, then they place you in a room with children, and you interact with these children, and they kind of take their notes, and then they say, okay, you're ready for placement. And they start placing these kids with you for weeks at a time. So we went through probably about 4 or 5 sets of kids, and I got to tell you this funny story. It's funny. So my wife decides the first set of kids we're going to get are 4 African American babies. And they were the prettiest thing you ever laid eyes on. They were just beautiful kids, but they were very rambunctious. They were jumped around. So I said, you sure you want to do this? And she said, absolutely. Let's do it. So I go out and buy 4 car seats. I put them in my SUV. We meet the social worker at McDonald's in Union, Kentucky. I get out, my heart kind of drops to my feet because I'm looking at these 4 African American babies going, oh my gosh, we're getting ready to take these kids home, So we take the kids home. My wife's still working at Jewish Hospital as a nutritionist at that time. I'm running my company, and I'm thinking, how are we going to fit all this into our busy lives? So my wife says, "Don't worry, Don, we got this." So the funny part of the story, I won't tell you the whole story, but I'll cut it short here. But so I go to work the next day. I say, "You sure you're okay to stay home with these babies?" She
How
says,
old were they?
We had a 6-month-old, a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So
Yeah,
I mean, they're little.
I've been right there. Yes.
Yeah, yes. So you can relate. You can relate. So we get these kids home, and and we put them to bed. I go to work the next morning. She says, I'm good. I can take care. You go to work, do your thing. So about noon, I get a phone call. And she says, she's crying. She's, Don, come home. She goes, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I was like, what's wrong? She goes, I can't do it.
Everything.
Goes, yeah. So I walk in, and the kids are jumping, the older ones are jumping around on the bed. And she's got the baby, feeding the baby. So I said, what do you want me to do? She goes, call Bree. Bree was our social worker. And I said, I called Bree up, and I said, Bree, I said, unfortunately, I think this is going to be too much for us. I said, she goes, I told you guys this, 4 kids, first time. So she said, no problem. So they came back and picked the kids up. And of course, they went back to the foster agency. And of course, they ended up getting placed with another family who eventually adopted them. It was a great story. So, but we learned our lesson. You don't take 4 kids on the first time you're fostering. So any parents out there looking to be foster parents, maybe stick with one.
Start with 4.
Yeah, exactly. So, but long story short, we went through 2 or 3 sets of kids after that. And here's the thing about fostering: you got to be a very patient person, because these kids come with a lot of struggles. I mean, so we took these kids and we just loved them unconditionally. And the thing that's really cool about fostering is you see the change in them as they go. But the bad part about it is all the judge has to do is hit his gavel and say the kids are going back to the foster parents.
Wow.
Are the original
parents?
Yeah, they're actual parents. Maybe the parent got sober for 6 months or a year, got out of rehab. So we kept going through this process. So it was really weighing on us heavily. So me and my wife sit down and we said, we want to make a decision here. We're either going to find foster kids that are foster to adopt,
right,
or we're going to keep fostering. And we made the decision to write Holly Hill a letter. And we wrote them a 2-page letter. My wife wrote it all up. It was a real nice letter, and said, hey, we appreciate what you guys have done for us. These kids have changed our lives, but we want to foster to adopt. And so we sent it in, and we got a call immediately from Bree, our social worker. And she said, you guys are in luck. She goes, I know you guys have been through a lot. Like, we get these kids, love them, and then they got to go back, and get the kids, love them, they got to go back. So we did that 4 times.
Wow.
Even with the 4 babies we had. So that was the first set of kids that we had. And so we went through Bradley and Cooper. They were teenage boys that we had. We had a sibling group of 3, which is 2 girls and a boy. And I had little Justin, which he was so cool. He'd wake up on Saturday morning and rest. He liked wrestling, so we'd watch wrestling together, and he called me dad. So, you're changing these kids' lives.
Yeah.
And you start loving them, and all of a sudden you get a knock on the door. Hey, their mom's out of rehab and she wants her kids back. And of course, there's nothing you can do about it. So once we wrote the letter, and so Bree calls us and she says, we have a sibling group of 6 children. She goes, we got 3 girls. There was 5 girls and 1 boy. Damien, of all the boys, his name was Damien. So she says, we're gonna see if you guys want to meet the 3 girls. And so we're like, yeah, sure. So we go to Holly Hill, we meet them, we of course fall in love with them, and they're just beautiful little girls. So they said their mom has lost her parental rights, and she has given up, custody of these 3 children. So that's going to be happening really fast. So would you be interested in fostering? He said, give us a day to think about it, and we'll get back with you. So we went home and, of course, prayed about it. And I told God, I said, if these kids are meant to be in my life, then it's going to happen. And so we woke up the next morning and Cindy's like, we're going to get those kids, So we went and picked them up a couple of days later, and they came home, stayed with us for probably about 6 months. And the mom, she was having a lot of emotional problems, like calling Holly Hill and saying, I want my kids back, because the date was coming up for her to lose her parental rights. And so we really struggled with that. And so the other three foster kids, which is really cool, that were in the group, they got fostered by another family who were Nancy and her husband, who are friends with us today. So the cool thing
Awesome.
is we've got to keep these kids together, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So long story short, my girls today are 8, 10, and 13. So Ariel, which is we got her when she was 2, and Ariel's 8 now. So Marissa is 10 years old, and then Caitlin just turned 13. So we've had them for about 6 or 7 years. They are Reilly girls now. So if you see my post on Facebook,
yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So these girls have just been a blessing to us. And and you could probably heard Jim in the background. He said, then what happened? So my wife gets pregnant with our 4th child, which is Adriana, which is our 5-year-old now. So she comes in on Valentine's Day and says, Don, I'm pregnant. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So all of a sudden I go for all my friends are like, Don, you went from 0.60 in 2.3 seconds with children. So, because it would just to be me and my wife and the dog. Now it's me, my wife, the dog, and 4 kids. So, but you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. And Adriana, my youngest, I can't imagine her living life today without the other 3 girls being in her life. And God always has a plan, and that's what I always said is, it's amazing.
He was just holding back on Adriana until you got her sisters in place.
Yeah, so it's amazing. So
that's great.
So I'm very glad that I got to share that story with you. So
I love it. I feel like maybe Dave can relate, right? He's divorced and he's got his 2 young children, and that was like fairly consistent life. Then he comes into my world. He's got 4 more kids, 4 more dogs, horses, cats, dogs. His friends are like, "Oh my God, Dave, are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess." Right?
God had a different plan. Yeah, absolutely.
The whole other conversation. He went from fairly structured to just mayhem. Our world is mayhem, but it works for us. But I see how it works. So it doesn't have to be completely according to one plan and structured and all that. You got to just be open to, 4 kids, that's a lot. There are a lot of people that have a lot of kids, right? So, but 4 kids, it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to stay on top of. It's a lot to be there and feel like you're trying to be that person for all the kids. And then on top of that, you're starting one company after another, starting the nonprofit. So you are a busy, busy man.
Well, my wife's asked me if I ever sleep. She says, "Do you ever sleep?" Because it's get up at 6:30, get the kids on the bus. I give my wife the credit though, because she stays home with the kids all day. She doesn't work at Jewish Hospital anymore as a nutritionist. So when we adopted the kids, she kind of gave that up. So the real work starts at home. I always say, my wife I call her she's the one that does the heavy lifting, because I go out here and deal with people all day, and she's home dealing with the kids. So I admire that she, has that kind of patience, because sometimes I pull my hair out what little bit I got left, but she can stay home and she has the patience. And I think that's why God creates women, is because they have that nurturing and, but she is just a trooper when it comes to dealing with the kids every day, because she just, and you got kids. It's a job. People don't realize.
It's a job.
Yes, it's a lot of work. So
it's a job. I used to set up. My husband was deployed a lot. First he was a teacher and he coached and he was after school activities. So I'd have all these kids at home. Plus I was working a real estate job. But I would, you got 4 kids, and in the early time when you start early in your 20s, the money was an issue, right? So 4 kids, you got to keep them entertained. I would set up like obstacle courses, like put shoes in a line and have the coffee table be one thing, and then they'd hide under the couch. Like you just got to, you just have romper room in your house, and sometimes you sit back and you're like what happened to me? You can kind of feel swallowed up, right, and absorbed. But it's good, and I'm glad that you all found that. You all. To be that family and to be so grateful for it and to love it and embrace it. I think it's a gift, and you guys got it going on. The Reilly girls, the Reilly family. It's a good fix.
Well, I always say charity starts at home, and and I'm just blessed that God gave me children, because growing up, I never thought I'd have children. And, I thank God every day. I'm like, I got 4 beautiful girls. And the funny thing is, I lost my mom about 4 years ago. She died of cancer. And my mom always wore this little necklace and it said "No Fear" on it. And I still got it at my house, and I saved it when she passed away. And my biggest regret in life is that my mom never got to lay eyes on my children, because she passed away, of course, before we adopted the girls and had Adriana. But that's my biggest regret in life. And but it's funny, I was and I'll tell you this story. It's kind of a moving story, but my mom told me before my daughter was born, when she was still alive, she said, "Don," she goes, "I just see you having a baby." And she goes, "You're going to pull this baby out, and it's going to have these big blue eyes with these big eyelashes." And I'd say, "Mom, you're crazy." So when Adriana was born, the doctor when she came out, I looked down at her, and she had these big blue eyes and big eyelashes. And my mom, just everything hit me right there. I was like, wow, my mom was right. My mom God gave her that vision. That vision of it. And it was amazing. I was like, here my mom was right. She's seen it before I seen it. So it's just been a blessing. It really has. So
I love it. That's great. That's great. So American Snippets started largely because we realized that we did still have that American dream within us. We realized it's alive and well, and we got really frustrated and upset that people continue to say it's dead, it's gone, it's buried, this country is terrible, et cetera, et cetera. So we think the American dream is alive, it's well, it's flourishing, but it just means something different to everybody. And it's finding that version of that within yourself. So I'd like to ask you, when I say the words, the American dream, what does the American dream mean to you?
Well, I see the American dream being peace and harmony with folks just in the world. I know we got so much turmoil out there today. I hate that we have so much division between people. And I think at the end of the day, I think the American dream, it's all what you create in your head. But in my head, I create harmony and peace with people. And I believe I've always been a giver. So I believe in giving, because one of the things that my mother always taught me, if you give, you get back tenfold. Yeah. And I think that's my American dream, is just that we have peace and harmony with folks out there, and everybody can just get along, and basically we could all grow together. And I think the fact of, if you're not helping other people, get up out of the chair, get out, turn the TV off, and get out there and do something for your community. Help folks. There's a lot of hurting people out there. And I think if we all just do a small part, we can change the world. There's no doubt about it. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you're doing. I'm so glad we got to meet you, and I'm excited that we get to share your story, and we will follow up with your story. If anybody has questions, they can get in touch with us. We'll send them to you, or they can go directly to you, but we're happy to serve as a conduit in between. And we're looking forward to linking you up with so many of the other amazing people that we have featured and the organizations they have. There's a lot of continuity here, a lot of synergy here. So we're excited to.
Well, I want to thank you guys for what you do. When I met you guys, I just seen your spirit, your drive, your energy. And I think that's why we kind of connected. And I just see you guys are doing great things, and I'm excited what the future holds for the both of us. So I'm thank you guys for having me on today. It's been an awesome time. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.